Far away from Earth, in a part of the galaxy filled with stars and strange worlds, there was a place called Zoltron 7. It was not like Earth. The planet glowed faintly with colors that shifted like an ocean under sunlight. Strange towers made of crystal stretched high into the sky, humming softly as if alive. This was the home of the Galactic Council, a group of beings from different planets who came together to make decisions for everyone in the galaxy. Keltor stood quietly at the edge of the large circular room where the council met. He was tall, with skin that shimmered like polished stone, and his deep blue eyes carried the weight of centuries. He had seen many things during his long life: wars, alliances, betrayals. But nothing worried him more than what he was about to say today. For years, he had tried to warn the others about humans. These creatures from Earth were small compared to most species in the galaxy, but they were clever, fast, and dangerous when threatened. The council chamber buzzed with voices as members arrived. Lyra Nye floated gracefully toward her seat, her body glowing faintly beneath the water-filled dome that surrounded her. She represented the Luminae, a peaceful aquatic race known for their wisdom. Across from her sat Drevlock, whose insect-like form clicked and clattered as he moved. His people, the Exetherians, valued order above all else. Both dismissed Keltor's warnings as fear-mongering, refusing to believe humans could be such a threat. When the meeting began, Keltor stepped forward. "Honored members," he said, his voice calm but firm, "we must address the issue of humanity before it is too late. They expand quickly, taking resources without thought for others. Their technology grows faster than their understanding of its consequences." Lyra Nye tilted her head slightly. "Keltor, you speak as though these humans are monsters. But we have observed them. They are young, yes, but also curious and full of potential. And reckless." Keltor replied sharply. "They do not listen. They act first and think later. If we do not guide them now, they will bring chaos to the galaxy." Drevlock raised one spindly arm. "Your concerns are noted, Keltor, but acting against them would only provoke conflict. Let us give them time to mature." Time was something the council seemed to have plenty of, but Keltor knew better. Humans did not wait. Back on Earth, leaders like Joseph Carter and Emily Dawson pushed harder every day to explore new worlds and claim new territories. They dreamed of greatness, unaware, or perhaps uncaring, that their actions sent ripples through the galaxy. As the debate continued, no one noticed the faint transmission coming from a distant star system. It was a message from the Glimmerfolk, a fragile crystalline species hoping to trade with humanity. Their ambassador, Silvra, had reached out, seeking help for her dying world. But none of the counselors imagined how this simple act of goodwill would lead to disaster. For now, the council chose to ignore Keltor's warning. They believed humans were just another species learning to find their place among the stars. What they didn't realize was that ignoring the problem wouldn't make it go away. It would only make it worse. And soon, the galaxy would pay the price for their mistake. The Glimmerfolk's ship shimmered like a jewel as it descended through Earth's atmosphere. Its surface reflected light in dazzling patterns, making it look more like an alien artifact than a spacecraft. The beings inside were just as unusual, crystalline forms that pulsed with soft inner light. They called themselves the Glimmerfolk, and they had traveled far to meet humanity. Their world was dying, its core energy fading, and they hoped to trade for resources that could save their people. Silvra, their ambassador, stepped carefully onto the ground at a secret facility in Nevada. She was taller than most humans, her translucent body glowing faintly even in the bright desert sun. Around her, scientists and military personnel watched with a mix of awe and suspicion. Among them was Nathan Hayes, a diplomat sent by the U.S. government to handle first contact. He adjusted his tie nervously as he approached her. "Welcome to Earth," Nathan said, speaking slowly into a translator device clipped to his collar. "We are honored to meet you." Silvra tilted her head slightly, her voice chiming like wind chimes. "Thank you for receiving us. We come in peace, seeking your help." For days, The two sides talked. Silvera explained how her people needed a rare mineral found on Earth, one that could stabilize their planet's energy field. In return, they offered advanced technology, devices capable of purifying water or generating clean energy. It seemed like a fair deal, but things quickly grew complicated. The Glimmerfolk began extracting the mineral using their own equipment, which hummed with strange power. Unbeknownst to them, their process disrupted Earth's weather patterns. Clouds gathered unnaturally fast over the desert, and sudden storms lashed the area with fierce winds and lightning. The humans watching grew uneasy. To them, it looked like the aliens were weaponizing the weather, not realizing the chaos was accidental. General Alan Monroe paced angrily in a nearby command tent, a stern man with sharp features and a no-nonsense attitude. He didn't trust the Glimmerfolk from the start. "This is exactly why we can't let outsiders meddle in our affairs," he muttered to his aides. "Look at what they're doing to our skies." Nathan tried to calm him down. "They're not doing this on purpose. It's just a side effect of their technology. We need to talk to them, figure out how to fix it." But Monroe wasn't listening. To him, the storms were proof that the Glimmerfolk posed a threat. Without waiting for orders, he gave the command to attack. Soldiers moved in, surrounding the alien ship with tanks and armored vehicles. When Silvera emerged to investigate, she was met with shouts and raised weapons. "We mean you no harm," Silvera chimed, raising her hands, or what passed for hands, in surrender. But the soldiers didn't understand her words. Fear took over, and shots rang out. The crystalline bodies of the Glimmerfolk shattered under the barrage, their lights flickering and fading until nothing remained. Nathan stood frozen, horrified by what he had witnessed. The once glowing ship now lay dark and silent, its surface cracked and lifeless. Back at the Pentagon, leaders scrambled to cover up the incident, claiming the Glimmerfolk had attacked first. News outlets repeated the official story, painting humanity as the victim. Far away, in the depths of space, the Galactic Council received fragmented reports of the tragedy. Kelter clenched his fists, his suspicions confirmed. Humanity had reacted with violence, just as he feared they would. But when he brought up the issue during the next council meeting, others dismissed it. They were provoked, Liranai argued gently. "Surely, there is more to the story." Drevlock clicked his mandibles in frustration. Even if they acted rashly, one incident does not justify condemning an entire species. Kelter wanted to argue further, but he knew it was pointless. The council refused to see the danger, choosing instead to believe humanity could be reasoned with. Meanwhile, Earth celebrated its victory, unaware of the storm of consequences brewing in the galaxy. The Glimmerfolk's destruction marked only the beginning. The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with tension as news of the Glimmerfolk's destruction spread. Kelter stood at the center of the room, his shimmering form rigid with anger. His deep blue eyes scanned the other council members, searching for any sign of understanding. But what he saw instead was denial. Faces turned away, whispers exchanged, and dismissive gestures. "They killed them," Kelter said, his voice low but firm. "Without provocation, without reason. The humans attacked the Glimmerfolk simply because they feared what they did not understand." Liranai floated gently in her water-filled dome, her soft glow dimming slightly as she listened. "Kelter, we must be careful. We do not yet know all the facts. Perhaps there was a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Kelter snapped, his tone sharper than usual. "How many misunderstandings will it take before you see the truth? Humanity is reckless, impatient, and dangerous. They act first and ask questions later, if they ask at all." Drevlock clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "Even if your claims are true, we cannot judge an entire species based on one incident. It would be unjust." Before Kelter could respond, the doors to the chamber slid open. All eyes turned as Samantha Brooks entered. She was human, recently appointed as Earth's representative to the Council. Her presence was still new, and many of the alien leaders viewed her with suspicion. Samantha walked confidently to the center of the room, her posture straight and her expression calm. "I'm here to address the accusations against my people," she began, her voice clear and steady. "What happened with the Glimmerfolk was tragic, but it was not an act of aggression. Our soldiers acted in self-defense after their weather systems caused chaos. We had no choice." Kelter stared at her, his frustration evident. "Self-defense. Your soldiers fired upon beings who came in peace. You destroyed a species that only wanted to survive." Samantha met his gaze without flinching. "I understand your concerns, Kelter, but you're missing the bigger picture. Humanity is still learning how to interact with other species. Yes, mistakes were made, but labeling us as a threat is unfair. We have so much to offer the galaxy." Her words stirred murmurs among the council members. Some nodded in agreement, while others exchanged skeptical glances. Lyra and I spoke up, her voice soothing. "Perhaps Samantha is right. Humanity is young, and young species often make errors. Shouldn't we guide them rather than punish them?" Kelter clenched his fists but said nothing. He knew arguing further would only waste time. The council had already made up its mind. They weren't ready to confront humanity. For now, Earth would face no consequences for what it had done. Back on Earth, life continued as usual. News of the Glimmerfolk incident reached the public, but it was twisted into a story of heroism. General Alan Monroe appeared on television, praising the soldiers who had defended the planet. "We showed those aliens that Earth won't back down," he declared, earning cheers from the audience. President William Grant also addressed the nation, framing the event as a victory. "This proves that humanity can stand strong against any threat," he said. "But let me be clear, we seek peace, not conflict. If other species wish to trade or cooperate, we welcome them with open arms." Behind closed doors, however, some humans felt uneasy. Nathan Hayes, the diplomat who had witnessed the attack firsthand, couldn't shake the image of Silver's shattered body. He tried to speak out, writing reports and meeting with officials, but his voice was drowned out by those eager to celebrate. Meanwhile, in space, fragments of the Glimmerfolk's ship drifted silently through the void. Their light was gone, their voices silenced forever. The galaxy mourned their loss quietly, but humanity moved forward, unaware of the shadows gathering around them. Far from Earth, Kelter watched and waited. He knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Back on Earth, the incident with the Glimmerfolk quickly faded from public concern. The government and media painted it as a victory, a story of humanity standing strong against an unknown threat. But for leaders like President William Grant and NASA Director Laura Bennett, it was also a wake-up call. Humanity's place in the galaxy was no longer just a dream. It was a reality. And they were determined to claim it. Under Laura's guidance, humanity's exploration efforts accelerated. New ships were built, faster and stronger than ever before. They were powered by warp technology, a breakthrough that allowed humans to travel vast distances in mere days. With each mission, astronauts ventured deeper into uncharted space, mapping stars, planets, and moons that no human eyes had ever seen. It was an exciting time, filled with hope and ambition. One day, a team led by Captain Ryan Cole discovered a planet unlike any other. It orbited a bright yellow star and had lush green forests, sparkling rivers, and mountains topped with snow. The air was breathable, the soil rich, and the resources abundant. To the scientists back on Earth, it seemed perfect, a new home waiting to be claimed. Laura presented her findings to President Grant, who immediately saw the potential. "This could solve so many of our problems," he said, leaning forward in his chair. "Overpopulation, resource shortages. We can start fresh on this planet." But there was one detail they hadn't considered. The planet wasn't empty. Hidden among the trees and valleys lived the Quarks, a gentle avian species with feathers that shimmered like rainbows. They had lived on the planet for thousands of years, building simple villages and living in harmony with nature. To them, the arrival of humans was both fascinating and terrifying. when the first settlers arrived, led by billionaire entrepreneur Daniel Hughes, tensions began to rise. Daniel had funded much of the expedition, hoping to profit from the planet's rare minerals. He didn't care about the Korrix. He saw them as obstacles in his way. "These creatures don't understand progress," he told his workers. "If they won't move, we'll make them." At first, the Korrix tried to communicate. Their leader, a wise elder named Kalis, approached the settlers with gifts. Beautiful stones and woven fabrics meant as tokens of friendship. But the humans misunderstood their intentions. Some settlers thought the Korrix were mocking them. Others saw them as a threat. When Kalis refused to leave his village, things turned violent. The settlers, armed with advanced weapons, surrounded the Korrix village at dawn. The birds scattered in panic, their cries echoing through the forest. Kalis stood bravely in front of his people, spreading his wings wide. "We mean you no harm," he called out, though his words were lost in translation. The settlers opened fire, and chaos erupted. By the time the dust settled, the village was destroyed, and many Korrix lay dead. Survivors fled into the wilderness, leaving behind everything they had known. Footage of the attack was captured by a settler's helmet camera and later smuggled off-world. It showed the brutality of the massacre, the terrified faces of the Korrix, the relentless gunfire, and the flames consuming their homes. When the video reached the Galactic Council, outrage spread like wildfire. Even those who had once defended humanity struggled to justify what they saw. Kelter watched silently as the footage played on the Council's large screen. His expression was grim but unsurprised. "This is what I warned you about," he said quietly. Liranai looked away, her glow dimming in sorrow. Drevlock clicked his mandibles angrily. "Enough is enough," he said. "We cannot ignore this any longer." Samantha Brooks, the human representative, sat quietly, her face pale. She had defended her people before, but this was different. There was no denying the truth now. Humanity had crossed a line, and the galaxy would not forget it. Far away on the ruined planet, the surviving Korrix gathered in secret. They mourned their losses but vowed to fight back. Though they lacked the technology to match humanity's weapons, they had something else: knowledge of the land and a deep connection to their home. For the first time in their peaceful history, they prepared for war. The seeds of conflict had been sown, and there was no turning back. The massacre of the Korrix village sent shockwaves through the galaxy, but on Earth, the truth remained buried. Daniel Hughes and his team painted the attack as a necessary act of self-defense. "The Korrix attacked us first," Daniel lied in interviews broadcast worldwide. "We had no choice but to protect ourselves." His words were echoed by politicians and news anchors, turning the settlers into heroes rather than invaders. Back at the Galactic Council, however, the smuggled footage told a very different story. The council chamber was eerily silent as the video played, showing the terrified Korrix fleeing their burning homes while humans fired without mercy. Kelter watched grimly, his suspicions confirmed once again. Lyra and I floated quietly, her glow dimmed by sorrow, while Drevlock's mandibles clicked rapidly in anger. Even those who had defended humanity before struggled to justify what they were seeing. "This is not self-defense," Kelter said, breaking the silence. "This is slaughter. How many more species must suffer before we take action?" Samantha Brooks sat frozen in her seat, her face pale. As Earth's representative, she felt the weight of shame pressing down on her. She had argued that humanity deserved a chance to prove itself, but now she questioned whether she had been wrong. Still, she tried to defend her people. "This footage only shows one side of the story," she said weakly. "There may be details we don't know." Keltor turned to her, his voice sharp. "How many sides can there be when innocent beings are killed for no reason? Your people destroyed an entire village, Samantha. They left survivors with nothing, no homes, no food, no hope." Before she could respond, Drevlock spoke up. "Enough excuses. If humanity refuses to respect other species, then we must force them to listen. The council erupted into heated debate. Some argued for sanctions against Earth, cutting off trade and communication. Others pushed for military intervention, though few relished the idea of war. In the end, no decision was made. The council adjourned, leaving the galaxy's future uncertain. Meanwhile, the surviving Quarics began to fight back. Though they lacked advanced weapons, they knew their land better than anyone. Under cover of night, small groups of Quarics crept into settler camps, sabotaging equipment and stealing supplies. Their attacks were swift and silent, striking fear into the hearts of the humans. For the first time, the settlers realized they were not untouchable. Daniel Hughes grew increasingly desperate. He ordered his workers to build walls around their settlements and patrol the surrounding areas. "We'll show these creatures what happens when you mess with us," he growled during a meeting with his staff. But despite his bravado, fear spread among the settlers. Supplies dwindled, morale dropped, and tensions ran high. On Earth, President Grant faced growing pressure from both sides. Some demanded retaliation against the Quarics, calling them terrorists. Others, like journalist Rachel Meyer, exposed the truth about the massacre. Her articles sparked protests in major cities, with people holding signs that read *Stop the violence*, and *Peace, not war*. Rachel's work caught the attention of Dr. Michaela Hart, a scientist known for her research on alien cultures. Together, they formed a coalition to push for diplomacy instead of conflict. "We've made terrible mistakes," Michaela said during a televised interview. "But it's not too late to fix them. We need to talk to the Quarics, not fight them." Their efforts gained traction, inspiring others to speak out. Yet powerful voices within the government dismissed them as idealists. General Alan Monroe, still riding high from his role in the Glimmerfolk incident, called for reinforcements to crush the Quarics' resistance once and for all. As the battle lines hardened, Kellis, the Quarics' elder, gathered his people deep in the forest. "We cannot defeat them with strength alone," he said softly, his voice carrying wisdom beyond his years. "But we can show them that this planet is ours. It belongs to the trees, the rivers, and the skies, not to them." With renewed determination, the Quarics prepared for another strike. This time, they aimed for the heart of the settlers' operation, the mining facility where Daniel Hughes worked tirelessly to extract the planet's precious minerals. If they succeeded, it would cripple the settlers' efforts and send a clear message to humanity. Far away, in the halls of the Galactic Council, Kelter watched and waited. He knew the coming days would shape the fate of the galaxy. Humanity had shown its capacity for destruction, but also for change. Whether they chose peace or continued down their path of violence remained to be seen. The Quarics struck at dawn, their movements swift and silent. Under the cover of thick mist rolling through the forest, they descended upon the mining facility that Daniel Hughes had built. The humans stationed there were unprepared for what came next. Using tools crafted from sharpened stone and clever traps made of vines and branches, the Quarics disabled the facility's power generators and set fire to piles of equipment. By the time the alarms blared, half the site was in chaos. Daniel Hughes stumbled out of his quarters, his face red with anger. "What's happening?" he shouted at one of his workers, who was frantically trying to put out a small blaze. "It's them," the worker cried, pointing toward the tree line where shadows moved like ghosts. "They're attacking." Daniel clenched his fists, fury boiling inside him. He grabbed a rifle from a nearby guard and barked orders. "Shoot anything that moves. I want this place cleared by sunrise." The settlers fired blindly into the forest, their shots echoing through the valley. But the Quarics were already gone, melting back into the wilderness as quickly as they had appeared. They left behind only destruction and a clear message. This planet was not theirs to take. News of the attack reached Earth within hours. President William Grant called an emergency meeting with his advisors, including General Alan Monroe. "This cannot continue," Grant said, slamming his fist on the table. We need to show these creatures that we won't back down. Monroe nodded eagerly. Sir, if we send reinforcements, we can wipe them out completely. A show of force will end this once and for all. But not everyone agreed. Dr. Michaela Hart and journalist Rachel Meyer pushed back against calls for violence. Every act of aggression makes us look worse, Michaela argued. If we keep fighting, we'll lose any chance of peace, not just here, but across the galaxy. Rachel added, the public is starting to see the truth. People are protesting because they know we're wrong. If you escalate this, it could tear our society apart. Grant hesitated, torn between two paths. On one side was Monroe's promise of quick victory. On the other was the growing chorus of voices urging restraint. For now, he chose to wait, ordering Monroe to hold off on sending more troops while they considered their options. Meanwhile, footage of the Quorix attack spread across the galaxy, reaching even the most distant corners. The Galactic Council watched in stunned silence as images of burning machinery and frightened settlers played on their screens. Kelter stood quietly, watching Samantha Brooks squirm under the weight of her people's actions. This proves my point, Kelter said finally, his voice calm but firm. Humanity does not learn. They destroy first and ask questions later, if at all. Samantha struggled to respond. Her earlier confidence was gone, replaced by guilt and uncertainty. I don't know what to say, she admitted softly. This isn't who we are, or who we should be. Lyra Nye floated closer, her glow flickering faintly. Perhaps it is time for humanity to face consequences, she suggested gently. If we do nothing, this cycle of violence will only continue. Drevlock clicked his mandibles in agreement. Enough talk. Action must be taken. The council began drafting plans for intervention, though disagreements delayed progress. Some wanted to impose sanctions on Earth, cutting off access to resources and technology. Others argued for direct action, sending ships to protect vulnerable species like the Quorix. As debates raged, Kelter grew impatient. He knew waiting too long would only lead to more bloodshed. Back on the Quorix planet, Kalis addressed his people after their successful raid. We have shown them that we will not give up our home without a fight, he said, his voice steady despite his weariness. But this war takes its toll on all of us. We must stay strong, for ourselves, for our children, and for the land that sustains us. As the sun rose over the forest, the Quorix prepared for the next battle. They didn't know how long they could hold out against humanity's might, but they refused to surrender. Each day brought new challenges, new losses, but also new hope. Across the stars, whispers of resistance began to grow. Other alien races, inspired by the Quorix's courage, started to question whether they too could stand against humanity's relentless expansion. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Kelter knew patience was no longer an option. The Quorix had shown courage, but they couldn't fight humanity alone forever. If the Galactic Council refused to act, someone else would have to step forward. Quietly, he began reaching out to smaller alien species, those who had suffered under humanity's shadow or feared what might come next. Among them were the Shadowkin, a secretive race capable of bending light to become invisible. Their leader, Vera, listened intently as Keltor explained his plan. We cannot defeat their weapons, she said softly, her voice barely more than a whisper. But we can weaken them. Vera agreed to provide cloaking technology that would allow allied forces to move unseen. Other species joined as well. The Pyrrhic, whose fiery breath could melt metal. The Trelkins, masters of engineering who promised to sabotage human ships, and even remnants of the Glimmerfolk, eager for revenge after losing so many of their own. Together, they formed a fragile alliance united by one goal: to stop humanity's reckless expansion. The coalition's first strike came without warning. Using cloaking devices provided by the Shadowkin, small teams infiltrated human colonies scattered across nearby star systems. They disabled power grids, destroyed supply lines, and left behind chilling messages written in glowing symbols. Leave or be destroyed. On Earth, panic spread as reports flooded in from the colonies. President Grant called an emergency session with military leaders, including General Allen Monroe. "This isn't just random attacks," Monroe growled, pointing at maps marked with red dots where incidents had occurred. "It's organized resistance. Someone's pulling the strings." Grant nodded grimly. "Find out who's behind this, and crush them." But finding the attackers proved nearly impossible. The coalition struck quickly and vanished before humans could retaliate. Each attack weakened Earth's grip on its colonies, straining resources and morale. Protesters back home grew louder, demanding answers about why humanity was fighting wars far from Earth instead of solving problems closer to home. Dr. Michaela Hart and Rachel Meyer used the chaos to push harder for peace. "These attacks are a wake-up call," Michaela told a crowded auditorium during a televised speech. "If we don't change our ways, we'll lose everything. Not just here, but everywhere." Rachel added, "People are tired of war. They want solutions, not more bloodshed." Their words resonated with many, sparking protests outside government buildings and military bases. Even some soldiers began questioning orders, refusing to participate in missions they saw as unjust. Divisions deepened within humanity itself, threatening to unravel the unity that had driven their expansion into space. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council remained paralyzed by indecision. Samantha Brooks pleaded with her fellow council members to intervene before things spiraled further out of control. "If you won't help, then at least let me speak directly to humanity," she begged. "Maybe I can convince them to negotiate." Kelter shook his head. "Negotiations will not work. Your people do not listen until it is too late." Samantha looked down, guilt heavy in her heart. She wanted to believe humanity could change, but every new report of violence made it harder. Back on the Korix planet, Kellis watched the skies anxiously. Though the Coalition's efforts gave his people hope, he feared retaliation. Humanity was wounded, yes, but cornered animals often lashed out with greater fury. When word reached them that Earth's fleet was mobilizing, Kalis gathered his warriors once more. "We cannot hide forever," he said, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "If they come for us, we must stand together." As ships filled with human soldiers approached the planet, Silvera, the Glimmerfolk ambassador who had survived the earlier massacre, sent a desperate message to Earth. Through hacked communications, her chiming voice reached millions of households worldwide. "Do not let hatred consume you," she pleaded. "There is still time to choose peace over destruction." Her words stirred something in the hearts of many. Protests erupted in cities around the globe, calling for an end to the conflict. Yet others doubled down, urging Earth to fight back harder. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see which path humanity would choose. War loomed closer with each passing day. The battle began near the Epsilon Delta system, a cluster of stars surrounded by swirling nebulae that painted the sky in hues of purple and gold. Admiral Robert Ellis stood on the bridge of Earth's flagship, his face hardened with determination. Behind him, rows of officers worked frantically at their stations, monitoring the approaching alien fleet. The Coalition had finally shown itself, no longer hiding behind cloaking devices or guerrilla tactics. This time, they came openly, ready to fight. "Admiral, enemy ships are within range," announced a young lieutenant, her voice trembling slightly under the weight of the moment. Ellis nodded, his jaw tight. "Fire at will." The human fleet unleashed its first barrage, beams of energy slicing through space like lightning. The Coalition ships scattered, their movements fluid and precise. Though outnumbered, the aliens fought with purpose, using their smaller vessels to dart around the larger human ships, striking weak points before disappearing again. Explosions lit up the void as both sides exchanged fire, each blast shaking the hulls of nearby ships. Amid the chaos, Silvera watched from a hidden outpost far from the battlefield. Her crystalline form flickered faintly as she broadcast another plea for peace to Earth. "This war solves nothing," she chimed, her voice echoing across communication channels. "Stop this now, before it consumes you all." But her words fell on deaf ears. On Earth, President Grant addressed the nation, framing the conflict as a fight for survival. "We cannot allow these aggressors to dictate our future," he declared, standing tall behind a podium. "Earth will not back down." Back in space, the tide of battle shifted unpredictably. The humans' advanced weaponry gave them an edge, tearing through several coalition ships. But the aliens' ingenuity kept them alive. Pyrrhic fighters unleashed torrents of flame, melting through armor, while Trelkin engineers hacked into human systems, disabling weapons mid-fight. Even the Shadowkin played their part, sneaking aboard human vessels to sabotage critical systems from within. Keltor observed the battle from a distant command ship, his expression grim. He had hoped for a swift victory, but humanity's resilience surprised him. They adapted quickly, countering every move the coalition made. Still, he refused to give up. "We must hold steady," he told his allies. "If we falter now, everything we fought for will be lost." As hours turned into days, the cost of the battle became clear. Ships on both sides were reduced to drifting wreckage, their crews lost to the cold embrace of space. Among the fallen was Vera of the Shadowkin, whose cloaked vessel was caught in a surprise attack. Her sacrifice rallied the coalition, reigniting their resolve to see the fight through. On Earth, cracks began to form in public support for the war. Images of burning ships and grieving families dominated the news, fueling protests led by Dr. Michaela Hart and Rachel Meyer. "How many more lives must we lose?" Rachel shouted during a rally in New York City. "This isn't about protecting Earth. It's about greed and pride." Even some soldiers questioned their role in the conflict. A group of pilots refused orders to launch another assault, citing moral objections. Their defiance sparked debates in military circles, further dividing humanity's ranks. Finally, after days of relentless fighting, Admiral Ellis received orders to withdraw. The human fleet had taken heavy losses, and supplies were running low. As the ships retreated, Keltor allowed himself a brief moment of relief, but no celebration. The battle had been costly for everyone involved, and the scars would linger long after the smoke cleared. Silver's broadcasts continued, reaching deeper into human society. Slowly, her message of peace began to take root. Ordinary people started speaking out, demanding answers from their leaders. For the first time, humanity seemed willing to consider another path. The galaxy held its breath, unsure whether the fragile hope for peace would survive, or if the cycle of violence would begin anew. The aftermath of the Battle of Epsilon Delta left both sides battered and weary. Humanity's fleet limped back to Earth, its ships scared, and its crew haunted by what they had witnessed. Admiral Robert Ellis stood silently on the bridge of his flagship as it entered orbit, staring out at the blue-green planet below. Victory had been declared, but it tasted hollow. The cost had been too high, too many lives lost, too many resources spent. On Earth, the cracks in society widened. Protests erupted in cities around the globe, with thousands taking to the streets demanding an end to the war. Dr. Michaela Hart became a central figure in the movement, her calm yet passionate speeches resonating deeply with those who felt disillusioned by humanity's actions. "We went into space seeking progress," she told a crowd gathered in Washington, D.C., "but instead, we brought destruction. Is this truly who we want to be?" Rachel Meyer worked tirelessly alongside her, publishing articles that exposed the truth behind the conflict. Her words reached millions, forcing people to confront uncomfortable questions about their leaders' decisions. Even within the military, dissent grew louder. Soldiers returning from the front lines spoke openly about the horrors they had seen, questioning whether the fight was worth it. President William Grant struggled to maintain control. His approval ratings plummeted as more citizens turned against him. General Alan Monroe urged him to double down, arguing that showing weakness would embolden their enemies. "If we stop now," Monroe warned during a private meeting, "they'll see us as prey. We can't let that happen." But Grant hesitated. He saw the growing unrest, the protests, the families grieving for loved ones lost in a war they no longer believed in. For the first time, he questioned whether continuing the fight was worth the price. In the Galactic Council chambers, Kelter watched events unfold with cautious optimism. The Coalition's resistance had shaken humanity, but it hadn't broken them. Not yet. Samantha Brooks approached him after a tense session, her face pale but determined. "You were right," she admitted quietly. "I didn't want to believe you, but humanity has gone too far." Kelter studied her for a moment before responding. "It is not too late to change course, but words alone will not fix what has been broken. You must prove your sincerity." Samantha nodded, her mind racing. She knew she had to act quickly if she wanted to prevent further bloodshed. Returning to Earth, she met with President Grant and presented him with a bold proposal: a ceasefire followed by negotiations with the alien coalition. At first, Grant resisted, fearing backlash from hardliners like Monroe. But when new polls showed overwhelming public support for peace talks, he relented. News of the proposed ceasefire spread rapidly, reaching even the most remote corners of the galaxy. Among the coalition, reactions were mixed. Kelter argued strongly in favor of giving humanity one last chance, while others, still bitter over past atrocities, remained skeptical. "How can we trust them?" asked the Pyrrhic commander, his fiery breath casting flickering shadows across the room. Silver stepped forward, her crystalline form glowing softly. "Trust is not given easily," she chimed, her voice gentle yet firm. "But without it, there can be no peace. Let us try, for the sake of all who have suffered." After much debate, the coalition agreed to halt hostilities temporarily, allowing negotiations to begin. Back on Earth, preparations moved swiftly. Scientists like Dr. Michaela Hart drafted proposals for sustainable coexistence, emphasizing shared resources and mutual respect. Journalists like Rachel Meyer documented every step, ensuring transparency and accountability. As representatives from both sides gathered aboard a neutral space station, tensions ran high. Old wounds lingered, mistrust hung heavy in the air, and emotions threatened to boil over at any moment. Yet amidst the uncertainty, a fragile glimmer of hope emerged. For the first time, humanity and its alien counterparts sat face to face, ready to talk rather than fight. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see if this tentative step toward peace could hold, or if the scars of war would tear them apart once more. The neutral space station where negotiations took place was a stark contrast to the chaos of war. Its walls gleamed with smooth metallic surfaces, and its corridors were quiet except for the soft hum of life support systems. Inside the main chamber, representatives from Earth and the alien coalition sat around a large circular table. The air was tense, but there was an unspoken understanding. This meeting could either heal wounds or deepen divisions. Samantha Brooks led the human delegation, her voice steady as she opened the discussions. "We are here because we recognize the mistakes we've made," she said, looking directly at Kelter and the other alien leaders. "Humanity acted out of fear and ignorance, and for that, we offer our deepest apologies." Kelter listened carefully, his expression unreadable. When it was his turn to speak, he chose his words with care. "Apologies are a start, but they cannot undo what has been done. What matters now is action, proof that humanity is ready to change." For days, the talks continued. Each side presented their grievances, their losses, and their hopes for the future. Dr. Michaela Hart shared detailed plans for sustainable resource sharing, showing how both humans and aliens could benefit without exploiting one another. Silver spoke on behalf of the Glimmerfolk and other affected species, her chiming voice filled with both sorrow and determination. "We do not seek revenge," she said. "We seek a way forward, together." Slowly, agreements began to take shape. Humanity agreed to halt all colonization efforts in contested regions and to dismantle military bases near alien territories. In return, the coalition pledged non-aggression and offered guidance on peaceful coexistence. It wasn't perfect, but it was a beginning. Back on Earth, President William Grant addressed the world, announcing the treaty. "This is not just a victory for diplomacy," he said, his tone somber yet hopeful. "It is a promise to learn from our past and build a better future." The announcement sparked mixed reactions. Some celebrated the end of hostilities, while others remained skeptical, fearing betrayal. Rachel Meyer worked tirelessly to keep the public informed, publishing stories that highlighted the importance of accountability. "Peace isn't something you declare once and forget about," she wrote. "It's something you work for every single day." On the Korix planet, Kalis gathered his people to share the news. "The humans have promised to leave us in peace," he said, his voice carrying both relief and caution. "But we must remain vigilant. Trust takes time." As weeks turned into months, the galaxy began to heal. Trade routes reopened, and small acts of kindness bridged gaps between species. Humans and aliens worked side by side on projects aimed at restoring damaged ecosystems and sharing knowledge. Though scars remained, there was a growing sense that cooperation was possible. Keltor reflected often on the journey that had brought them here. He had warned the Council about humanity's dangers, and he had been right. But he also saw glimpses of potential. Samantha Brooks, too, carried the weight of what had happened, vowing never to let history repeat itself. The road ahead would be difficult, and challenges would undoubtedly arise. But for the first time, there was hope, not just for humanity, but for everyone who called the stars home. Together, they had taken the first step toward a shared future, proving that even in the vastness of space, reconciliation was possible. And so, under the watchful eyes of countless worlds, the galaxy moved forward, one fragile promise at a time.